The Eversense E3 is an implantable continuous glucose monitor that lasts for 180 days, and I got to speak with someone who has used it for the last 4 years. Welcome to the show. I'm Justin. I have type 1 diabetes, and on here I talk all things diabetes tech, news, and management with educators, tech leaders, and those thriving with diabetes. The show comes out every Monday on YouTube and on podcast platforms. The Eversense is a sensor smaller than 2 stacked Tic Tacs that goes just under the skin and measures glucose. There's an outer transmitter that receives the readings and sends it to a smartphone, and the transmitter can easily come on and off at the user's leisure. The CGM is currently for those 18 years and older. I spoke with Eversense ambassador Paul Reid about what it's like getting it implanted, how the accuracy is, the on-device vibration alerts, and he gave me a demo of the app and all of the accessories. If you enjoy the show, I would love a like on YouTube and even better, a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That way other people can find the show. Keep in mind that anything you hear on this podcast or content on my social media and YouTube channel is not medical advice. Always consult with your physician before making changes to your healthcare. Today's episode is sponsored by T1D Exchange. You can directly make an impact on diabetes healthcare, treatments, and technology by participating in the T1D Exchange registry. It starts with a simple survey about your life with T1D, and it only takes about 15 minutes. After that, you'll have a personal portal with ongoing T1D study and survey opportunities. Plus, some of these studies even offer compensation. Signing up with the link in the show notes helps support my channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free content. You can sign up at t1dexchange.org/diabetic or click that link in today's show notes. Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm happy to have you here.
Hey, what's up, Justin? Good to be here.
I'm very excited to talk about the Eversense CGM with you. There's so much I want to know. And when we first spoke, you just kept telling me more. And I was like, okay, please hold those ideas for the show. Okay. Before we hop into the CGM, I want to know a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little bit about how long you've had type 1 diabetes and kind of what that's looked like?
Yeah, so a quick diagnosis story from myself. I was diagnosed almost 38 years ago. So I am approaching the level of veteran. I'm not veteran yet. I know some people have had type 1 for well over 50 years. But since the mid-1980s, I've been living with type 1. I was born and raised in Australia, and I was diagnosed in Australia. And I moved over to the US back in the late 80s. And so I've seen diabetes tech evolve from its 1980s infancy all the way through the 90s into the early 2000s up to where we are at today. And so I've been a proponent of using a lot of diabetes tech. Anytime something new comes out, I'm like, yes, let me try it. I want to get on this thing and see if it works and see if it fits with my lifestyle, those kind of things.
Yeah. How are you managing your diabetes today?
Today, I am on a pump break. So I've been off the pump. Actually, my pump break is extended into like 3 years now, 3 or 4 years. So I'm still on MDI. My management is, I'm monitoring glucose with a CGM, and I use Afrezza for my fast acting, and for my long acting, I use Tresiba.
Wow, so you're using long-acting injections and then only Afrezza for meals, no short-acting insulin through injections?
I would say 80 to 90% exclusive for Afrezza for all my quick acting, and then the remaining 10, 15% I'll use a Humalog pen.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, Afrezza is inhalable insulin. I did a whole episode with Ginger Vieira on it and her using it. It was so fascinating. It's like it activates faster and then it leaves the system faster. So it's cool to hear that that's how you're managing it. Your page on Instagram's Type 1 Outdoors. All outdoorsy posts. Can you just tell us a little bit about like what your day-to-day looks like, what you do?
As someone who is very outdoors driven. Like I do a lot of my stuff outdoors, like as far as like outdoor adventure, hiking, camping, stuff like that. The stuff that, takes me outside of the usual city life. But I'm also bringing diabetes along. And so I was like, you know what? There's a lot of useful info here for a lot of folks who may be intimidated by outdoor adventure. Maybe I could put it together on a blog. And so the blog kind of was okay, but then it didn't really take off as much as other social media platforms. So Instagram has been my best, my most responsive, I would say, for people interacting. Q&A, just like, how do you keep your insulin from, getting too hot in the sunshine? Or how, if you're in the snow up in the mountains, how do you stop your insulin from freezing? Just basic stuff like that. And then I just kind of like keep on making these posts with, whatever outdoor adventure I'm doing at the time. I'm also a rock climbing guide. So I do spend a lot of time with folks outdoors. And I also try to bring a lot of type 1 diabetics with me to, see how we can manage this chronic condition in vertical spaces. There's a lot of things that we don't necessarily consider when we're out there rock climbing. Like, for example, if we wear a harness, it's going to be sitting on our abdomen. And guess what else uses the abdomen? Gadgets.
Yep. So I did trapeze for a year. I'm on a little bit of a break, but when I had my CGM or pump on my waist, I would either get compression lows for my CGM, have things rip off, have them hurt. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you think about like, okay, this is going to be great. We're going to go climbing. I'm going to put on harness. I'm going to connect to a rope. I'm going to be, this is going to be awesome. And then suddenly, okay, I'm going to be lowering now. And oh, oops, I forgot about this one thing that was attached to my side. So the nice thing is with a lot of the gadgets that we have now, we can stick them to our arm, to our leg, to our hip, just, wherever that's kind of out of the way. So, those little things that we kind of think about or don't think about when we, head out for these little adventure sessions.
Yeah. So how long have you been using Eversense, and why did you decide to try it out?
So since 2019, so almost coming up on 5 years. Way back then, they had this intro program, which was very affordable to try it. And I was like, okay, I'm in. Let me see what this whole, new CGM system is all about. And I got on that system after about a month after meeting them for the very first time. And I was like, well, this actually isn't too bad. It kind of fits with my outdoorsy, athletic-y lifestyle because of the conveniences that it comes with. So there's pros and cons with every CGM system that we have. The biggest difference that I noticed with the Eversense system is that it was, number one, it was long term. Back then, this was the 90-day system. So, you have the CGM, the sensor was in for 3 months. So I was like, well, this is great. No sensor changes for 3 months. This is kind of awesome.
Right. And now it's 6.
Now it's 6 months. Yeah. And so the technology keeps on getting better and better with greater longevity between the systems. And it's like, you can kind of imagine what the future is going to look like. And there's a reason why this system lasts so long. So, one of the things I tell people that, this system, everything that you know or you think you know about CGM, continuous glucose monitoring, kind of like put that in the back seat, because this is a different kind of technology. Most CGM systems use a transdermal sensor. Like you've all seen that little tether, not a tether, but like a tiny little filament that goes under the skin connecting to a sensor. Well, this system doesn't use that transdermal thing. I have a little baggie here of these old.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you literally have. Oh my goodness, can you send me one? Oh, can you take one out and show it to us?
Yeah.
Paul right now has the actual sensor that goes underneath, and he's going to show our viewers on YouTube, but tell us about the size of it.
So I have
Oh my God, it's so small.
I've kept every one of my old sensors.
And for those listening, what it looks like to me is it looks like two Tic Tacs stacked on top of one another. So it's like as the diameter is the same as like a Tic Tac, and then it's maybe like two Tic Tacs tall.
It's a
That's
little
a tongue
thinner than a
twister.
Tic Tac. It's
Okay.
like as thick as, I don't know. It's like just like a few toothpicks, maybe.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
But yeah, it's like a couple of stacked Tic Tacs in height, but the thickness is like a few, like imagine 3 toothpicks. This is a fluorometer, which means that the way that it senses glucose is that there's a little LED inside of it. It's a specialized LED which fluoresces, so it, illuminates. And it's difficult to see, but there is like an area. Let me see if I can rotate it. And it's not this white thing, but it's just below this white thing. There is a sensor, and on top of the sensor there is a kind of like a polymer. I don't know exactly all the tech about it, but glucose in the skin will stick to it. And once that light goes off, there's a sensor that reads how much glucose is around the outside of this sensor. And so from that, there's, some algorithms, I guess, that would like measure how much is being reflected back, how much glucose is reflected back. They'll translate it into a number. And so from that number, you can look at your phone and it'd be like, oh, here you go. This is your glucose. So it's a fluorometer.
Wow.
So the idea here is that because it's not using what other CGMs use, which is like that little filament, which is like an enzymatic process where an enzyme breaks down glucose molecules. Over time, that will degrade, which means that other transdermal CGMs where you have to replace the sensor after 10, 14 days or something like that, it's going to degrade. And so you're going to get some wonky readings after a long time. This doesn't have that degrade. It doesn't degrade like that. So depending on what system you're using, this could stay in for a full 90 days, or in my case, a full 180 days, of really good glucose measuring. So it's like there's no degradation. It's just like, here are your numbers all the time, every day.
Is it every 5 minutes?
Yeah, the same as most other CGMs. So it's got a 5-minute update or a 5-minute refresh on your glucose.
Support for the podcast comes from ZocDoc. There shouldn't be compromises when it comes to mental health. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare hundreds of types of patient-reviewed in-network doctors and instantly book appointments with them online. I've used it myself and it's super easy. Just go to ZocDoc.com/diabetic and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/diabetic, ZocDoc.com/diabetic, or click the link in the show notes. Now I want to hear about the procedure. So maybe take me into that first one, right? Because anyone listening who's curious about this, that's how they're going to feel going into this if they decide to try it. How did you feel that day you were going to get it? Did you have any worries or anxieties? And kind of just walk me through that day a little bit.
Thinking back to 2019 when I first had this first procedure done, my doctor that was doing the insertion, he was a new doctor. He was new to the Eversense process. So he was still in his training phase when he was putting mine in. So he was a little apprehensive as well as I was a little apprehensive. And I think we kind of fed off of each other. But it was still an awesome setting. I mean, no one was really stressed out or freaked out about it. I did get a shot of lidocaine. And so I got this tiny little incision, which was maybe 3 or 4 millimeters, maybe 3 millimeters, really, really small. The sensor and the little insertion device was put in, the device was removed, And then on top, there was no stitches. There was just a couple steri strips to place over the incision. And the depth of the sensor is really, really superficial. It's like maybe 5 millimeters, 6 millimeters under the skin. So it
Okay.
sits in the squishy, fatty material that all CGM sensors sit in. And so, no stitches needed. It's just like steri strips with a tegaderm on top. And so after a few days, you just remove the steri strips, and then
Okay.
it's
So when could you start using it? How long did it
the
take?
very next day. So there is a warm up. So what happens is you pair the phone does this pairing. So you have to pair. There's a 3-step process. The phone has to pair to the transmitter, right? So this is the transmitter. The phone pairs to the transmitter via Bluetooth, and then the transmitter pairs to the sensor like this. So this is paired to this via like NFC, like near frequency. The same way that you use your Apple Pay on your phone at the grocery store. So that near frequency is how this sensor communicates with this transmitter.
How did it feel after the procedure? Was it a little sore for a few days? Like, what was that like?
No, I was expecting some pain. I was expecting some soreness. Honestly, nothing. Not even a little bit of anything. What I would do is, like, oftentimes they probably, folks at Eversense would say, no, don't do this. But I would go to the gym and I would lift weights, like the day of, the same day. Or I would go to the gym and go rock climbing the same day.
But are you saying, did you say Eversense specifically wants you to wait a certain amount of time before returning to that type of activity?
Yeah, there's actually nothing that says, I'm not sure if they say, please avoid activity, but, they would probably say, let's hold off on activity for a day. And, I may be breaking some rules there, but,
you're just going off of me. I'm ready.
There is
I'm good.
any need to wait for a day, because I am healing a tiny cut. I'm healing an incision.
Yeah.
So the risk of, like, the steri strips coming off or the tape coming off, I guess, is there. If you go work out and you get sweaty and the adhesive peels off, that's probably the biggest worry. But
yeah, and everyone listening, again, not medical advice. Paul does what Paul does.
This is not medical advice. I would not recommend doing this. Listen to what your practitioners tell you to do.
So you said this is just a few millimeters below. Like yeah. How? Like, can you feel it when you touch your arm?
Yeah. So if I was to just press, like, right on the top, I mean, it's difficult to tell. Like, you can, if you press hard enough, you can feel there's something, like, underneath there, but it's difficult to find.
Okay.
Because it's number one, it's kind of small, and number two, it's sitting in all that, that fatty material.
Yeah. Has the placement of the sensor moved around? Have you always had it in the same arm, in the same location, or do you need to move it around? What's that like?
What the label says is that you need to change the site from the old one to the new one at a new site. And what a lot of people do is they remove the old sensor from one arm and put a new one in the other arm to allow this old one to heal up. But I've heard of other people using the same location. So the label says that we have to use a different site for every time.
When you get a new one, is it in a slightly different location? Like, can you see the old incision? Is there, like, a little scar? Is there, like, a little mark? What's that kind of look like?
I can show you. Let me see if this will show up.
Okay.
Ignore this. This is a scratch I got from rock climbing. So ignore that big one. But let me see.
I think I see one, like, above it that's very hard to see. But okay. So for listeners, it's like a very faded, 2 millimeter long, very small
but like I said,
mark.
Ignore this one. This was not good.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, I have little marks on my arms and sides from my insulin pump tubing.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of used to that, kind of comes with the territory of using diabetes technology. So at least for me and from what I'm seeing on your arm, that wouldn't be a bad trade-off. This very like light mark that I'm sure you could even use like scar cream on to like
Oh
fade a
yeah,
little bit more.
of course. And it's so small that it's like it heals so well. I mean, it's like, and it's just so it's like 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters wide. It really depends on what the doctor does. If the doctor makes a larger incision, then there could be a much more visible scar.
Yeah. Can you show us the receiver again? So this is, or rather is this called a transmitter?
It's a
That
transmitter.
this goes on the outside. This is what connects
Yeah.
and talks to the sensor.
So on
So,
this side, I'll show you that I've got this on, and it's being stuck with a double stick adhesive just to hold it in place. Now, I don't have to use the adhesive if I don't want to. There are some people who use prosthetic adhesives, which is like a soft skin friendly glue, and you could just stick this straight on top. But
oh wow, that's interesting. How does placement work? Does it need to be exactly the same spot every time, or is there some wiggle room? You can go a little higher, a little over
there's a
with that
little wiggle room,
transmitter.
but there is a placement guide that's on the phone. So the app itself has a placement guide, and I can show you what the placement guide looks like. So it looks like this. It kind of looks like a Wi-Fi signal.
Okay.
But watch what happens. I'm going to see if I can do this with two hands and hold this up in front of the camera at the same time. If I take this, I'm going to see if I can do this at the same time. So now
Oh
it's
wow,
instant.
instantly says that you took it off. That
Right.
was wow, that's
I may
great.
have to sit
Okay,
back just a
cool.
little bit. But anyway,
I like that because it's funny with my CGM. Sometimes if a CGM rips off, it doesn't know instantly. It could go a few minutes where it's a little wonky. I like that instantly if this came
it's
off.
continuously monitoring, and now it's vibrating because it's like, oh hey, I don't know a sensor. So this starts vibrating, which is nice because if you're wearing long sleeves and it comes off under your sleeve, it'll start vibrating in your sleeve and be like, what's wrong? What's wrong? So watch
Wow.
what
So
happens. If I put this right
okay.
on top of you can see how it's like finding a signal. Oh, come on, come on, come on. Once I
Oh,
get a
I'm
really
seeing
good
it.
signal, it's, oh, where are you? And it's so hard to see, like, where is that old incision scar that makes the location really good. So
I
see,
think it
it's
found it.
getting
Oh,
close. It found it.
there we go. Yeah. Okay. So as soon as you were able to use it, you need a mirror.
So
Or a
right
mirror is
there, I've
helpful.
got
Okay.
like something in between good signal and okay signal. And there's another button here that says like fine tuning. So I can
Okay.
fine tune the signal and watch what happens like when I move my arm around. Like there is just a little bit of signal play between when I flex and deflex.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty fascinating to see like how much the location of the transmitter changes
Yeah.
above the location of the sensor.
So when it comes to the transmitter,
Yeah.
how often are you charging it and how long does it last on a full charge?
Okay, so the transmitter does need to be recharged every day or 2 days. You can see there's no plugs on it, but it does have these little sensor things at the bottom. And then you place the transmitter into the cradle like this, making sure the contacts are on the bottom. Click it into place, and then you let this sit for about 10 minutes. And if it was plugged in, there's a little LED that lights up on the front that says it's charging.
How long does it take roughly, you think, from it to go from 0 to 100 on a charge?
From 0 to 100, probably under 15 minutes.
Do you find that you're charging it every day or every other day?
So if you get a brand new one straight out of the box, you can let it go for like 2 days, 2.5 days without recharging it. And you know how with all rechargeable gadgets, over time, the rechargeability will diminish. So after about you know, 10, 11 months of this, I do have to recharge this every 24 hours.
Okay.
And so
It-
once this is charged, after 10 minutes, I'll take this off the cradle and then I'll place it back on the arm with, you know, a new adhesive. So I'll use this little adhesive strip, which is a double stick tape, like a double stick sticky.
And I read online that it's like a silicone adhesive.
Yes. So you
Tell me
know
about
how
that.
most CGM adhesives, they use, I don't know, some kind of like a combination of acrylic or something like that. And I've heard that there's a lot of folks who have major skin irritations with CGM adhesives. And I've seen some photos online of some people having some really nasty reactions.
So there's something nice about the flexibility of putting on a new one of those. How often would you say, or when are the moments you're deciding to put on a new one?
Usually when I charge it, you know, like in the evening, like after a big long hike, you know, up in the mountains where I'm getting all dusty and sweaty, I'll come home, take a shower, and while I'm in the shower, I'll put this on the recharge, on the charging cradle. And then once I'm done, I'll take it off the recharger and I'll put a brand new one of these onto the transmitter.
Every day sounds like a lot. Do you find that you're doing that mostly because you're very active? Do you think someone who's not going to the gym every day or doing all these hikes would this last for a few days, a week even? Or I mean, it's great having that flexibility to put on a new one, and it sounds like you have a massive supply of them, which I'm wondering how you get all of them, which I'll ask you next. But
Yeah.
if
So,
you're not super duper active all the time, can this last for a fair amount of days?
yes. The adhesive will last for a good, like, I would say 4 days. If you're not super active, the adhesive is going to last for 4 days. And it's a double
Okay.
stick. So it's like one side is going to be less sticky than the other after a few days. But I've been on some overnight backpacking trips where I could be hiking up through the mountains and at night I'm at camp. I don't want to be dealing with taking off another adhesive. I'll use the old adhesive. I'll recharge the transmitter at camp, like using a power pack, or in the morning I'll bring out my little solar charger and I'll put this on the solar charger for about 10 minutes and I'll recharge it under sunlight, which is kind of nice. And then just place it right back on top of the old adhesive tape.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And how do you have so many of these? Does Eversense send you a ton of them? Do you have to buy them? Are they included? How does that work?
No, so when you go visit the doctor and you get a new sensor put in, there's a package of stuff that they send you home with, and there is a box of 180 of these. They're basically assuming
Oh,
that you're
wow.
going to be using a fresh one every day over the life of the sensor. So you end up with a surplus
Okay.
after
Okay.
one sensor session. So you never run out of these. Never. And they come in not just white, but they also come in clear as well. So if you want to
Okay.
just wear the transmitter on a clear adhesive, where you could just have the transmitter just look like this sitting on your skin.
So obviously a flexibility with this device is the ability to take it on and off.
Yeah.
When you do that, I'm assuming that after a certain period of time, you won't get readings, right?
Right. And I think a lot of people are curious about that too. Is like, well, when the transmitter is off on the cradle getting recharged, am I still getting glucose readings? And the answer is no. There's no communication between this and the sensor while it's off.
The sensor itself that's under the skin, that doesn't have like memory on board, right? So that's not gonna be measuring, and then when you put it back on, it back
No. So
populates,
assume
right?
that there's going to be a
Okay.
gap. Um,
Okay.
so, like, for example, when I took the sensor off before, just to show you that, see how there's no gap in the reading? So there's no gap
Okay.
right here. But last night when I took a shower, this is what the gap looked like. You can see there's a
Okay.
gap.
So there's like a few reading gap.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a reading gap of like 15 minutes of however
Yeah.
long I was off. But you can see it like it realigns pretty closely to where it
Yeah.
was headed anyway. I was going to say too that you know how like with a lot of diabetics who really enjoy that special moment a few times a year when all your gadgets get changed at the same time, and you happen to take a
Yeah.
shower with nothing on, the naked shower. Well,
Yeah.
imagine you get a naked shower every day, every
Yeah.
freaking day.
That is nice, but I will say that it is water resistant or proof, right?
It
Like you
is.
can swim
You can
and
swim with it
shower with
too.
this.
Yeah, so the transmitter is water resistant. You can go swimming with it. Or if you don't want to go swimming, like for example, when I go down to the beach and I go play in the salt water, just in case I brush up against the sand and I don't want to accidentally unpeel it, I will take it off, put it on the beach towel, go swim, come back, dry off, put it right back on once I'm done swimming. But if you're in a pool, you can leave it on.
I was just on vacation and I had the sensor that I wear fall off, and I didn't even realize until like 45 minutes later.
Yeah,
So that ability to just take it off and put it back on,
yeah,
especially in situations like that, is definitely appealing. I want
yeah,
to get a better understanding of the alerts on this, because you mentioned vibrations earlier.
yeah.
I know that that's a big part of the alerts. So can you explain to me, how do alerts work?
Yes.
What are the notifications you're getting? What are the different variations?
Yeah. So remember earlier when I said everything that you know about CGM technology, put all of that in the back seat, because using this system, there's a lot of differences. One of the differences is there is a vibration that happens with the transmitter itself. Now, the vibration is different for every scenario. For example, your glucose is falling, there's a specific vibration pattern. There's also a vibration pattern for glucose rising. There's also a different pattern for out of range low, different pattern for, hey, I need a recharge. There's a different pattern for different things. So one of the things that there is a little bit of a learning curve when you get on this CGM, and that is learning the different vibration patterns. It's like a language. It's like, I think some people call it haptics, where there's like a vibration response. Once you learn the patterns and what each one means, you're now talking or listening to a new language between you and your CGM. So it's no longer just looking at numbers on your phone, which is nice, but you can also be like, I don't have to have my phone with me. I could be out on a jog. I could be out riding my bike. I could be swimming. I could be, out rock climbing, and I don't have to bring my phone along. The vibration patterns will alert me to what I need to know. Now, the patterns aren't going to tell me what the number is, but in the moment, the number isn't important. What is important is, am I crashing? Am I rising out of range? Am I way too high right now? Those are the important messages that it's kind of nice to be like, oh, this thing is keeping an eye on my glucose while I'm, off doing something crazy.
I love that. The fact that you can leave your phone behind, but still get detailed information through
Yeah,
vibrations.
kind of detailed.
Sometimes I feel a little off, and know if I get that vibration that tells me I'm going to have an urgent low soon,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. I can then I can go, figure out what I need to do to,
Yeah.
fix that.
And I've done that a
That's
couple
it.
times. I've been like away from the phone and I'll be like, okay, I just got a predictive low. I got a predictive low vibration. I'm like, okay, how much longer can I go before I go out of range? 10 minutes goes by, 15 minutes goes by, 20 minutes goes by now. That's a different vibration. Great. I'm out of range low.
Question: if
Yeah.
you're having like an urgent low, or a low, does it notify you when you get back into range through a
No,
vibration? Like, you're good now? No. Okay.
no. Great question. No, it doesn't. And basically, if you don't get any vibrations, chances are you're back in range.
Okay.
But you
And that's
could be
probably better. The less notifications
the
you're getting,
less
the better. But
notification.
just knowing,
And
yeah.
that's also nice too, especially if you're just recovering from a low at night. Like if you're asleep, um, this thing will wake me up. Like maybe not the first time if I'm in a deep sleep. It won't wake me up the first time, but after a couple of vibrations, I'd be like, great. Now I've got to get up, go to the kitchen, drink half a thing of orange juice, but like it'll start to recover. It'll be like maybe another vibration saying I'm out of range. But then after 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm back in range.
A huge benefit to this is someone who has hearing impairments
Yeah.
and really can rely on vibrations rather than alert sounds coming from a phone.
Yeah.
Having that onboard haptic feedback could be really beneficial for this community of people.
Yeah. And I've known a number of diabetics who also have hearing impairments, and they love the vibrations on this. And you can also use the app to tell you how sensitive do you want it to be for that notification. So you could tell the app, only notify me on like 3 milligrams per deciliter per minute or 4 milligrams per deciliter per minute. So if you want it to be super sensitive, you can turn that up, but you're going to get a lot of notifications. So what I normally do is I'll keep it down. Like, only notify me on the most important, critical notifications. I don't need to be known all the time. I'm one of those diabetics who wants to let diabetes take a back seat.
Yeah, no, alert fatigue is very much a thing. And I try to do my best with customization features to make it easier. All this sounds great, but I think something a lot of people watching are probably wondering is accuracy.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel the accuracy of this device is?
Amazing question. And I love answering this question because there is required calibrations with this. And so that leads me into, two topics at the same time. Because this is an implanted, this is an implanted device. This little sensor is implanted. If it, for any reason, isn't behaving correctly, this is a major red flag, but it wants you to keep a close eye on its functionality. So it says, hey, give me a quick calibration. And it does this once a day. It's just like, hey, just double check for me. And I'm like, I'm fine with that. I am so okay with calibration. And I've heard a lot of diabetics be like, you know what? I've been using my CGM and it hasn't required me to have a calibration ever since. And I answer that question with, are you sure? How sure are you on that number it's telling you? When's the last time you did a blood glucose check? And they're like, oh, I haven't checked my glucose in 2 weeks. It's like, really? How sure are you?
When it comes to that calibration, is there a set time that you can schedule it yourself, or are these happening sporadically where it's saying,
no, you
give me a
schedule it
calibration
around your schedule. So, and it's not something that you program in. You basically tell it, if I took just a regular BGM test on my BGM, and I got a number, I could use the app on the phone, be like, okay, here's what the number is. But the accuracy, in my experience, has been astoundingly on the money.
Could I make it so that my one calibration each day is at 9:30 a.m. every day when I'm brushing my teeth, and it's just brushing my teeth for my CGM?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yep. So what you do is you do a calibration, you put the number in on the phone, and if that's at 9:30, it'll remind you at 9:30 the next day.
What if at 9:30 the next day I ran to go get coffee, I'm running a little late, it's 10 a.m. Is there a grace period for that calibration? Does it give you a little flexibility, or are you out of numbers for 30 minutes?
No. It gives you another warning in about an hour. It says, oh, hey, and of course there's a vibration for calibration, a different vibration alert. So, it's like, oh, wait, what is that? Oh, it wants a calibration. Gotcha. So it gives you a 6-hour window. So it gives you a 6-hour time frame. And it says, hey, I'm still waiting on that calibration. And so it'll alert you every hour, and then eventually every 2 hours. And then it's just like, after 6 hours, then it's just like, it'll alert you again. It's like, where's my calibration? Where's my number?
Okay. That sounds super doable to me, especially with the flexibility. And there are things we do every day that take much longer that are our routines. So adding in one calibration a day, not so bad. I believe though, isn't there a window in the beginning where it needs two calibrations? How does that work?
Yeah, so during the warm-up phase, so when you do get a new sensor placed in your arm, there is a warm-up period. So it wants you to wait 24 hours to get the system clear of any site trauma. So after 24 hours, it wants you to do a calibration, like number one, and then in probably a couple of hours after, it wants to do a second calibration because it wants to learn. I mean, think about the way that most technology is. It's only as smart as the input it gets. So the first few calibrations, it's learning about you, and it's learning like, what is this? What does all this glucose mean? And you can tell it, this means 150, and this means 120, and this means 200, and this means something else. So those first four calibrations happen on the first day. So you get four calibrations to do on after your second calibration, you start getting numbers. But you continue to
Okay.
give it calibrations until it learns. And now after the fourth calibration, then it was like, oh, we're sailing now. We got it. We know what these glucose values mean.
Okay, and then is it a couple calibrations a day for the first like 3 weeks or something?
For the first couple of weeks, I forget what the actual number is, but yeah, for the first couple of weeks, it's still
Okay.
learning about you. And so it wants to
Okay.
be like, so you may have your calibration going at like 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And so it's still learning. And then after a couple of weeks, then it's like, we got this. Once a day
Okay.
is all I need. And so it just asks for that once a day.
Let's talk about the app. Can you kind of just give us a little bit of a walkthrough of the Eversense app?
Yeah. So the main screen of the app has your graph, your previous, you can go back like as far as you want, all the way back. And you can see like where your glucose levels came from. Look at that nice in range down there. There's a little square at the bottom here. I can kind of show you. Down here, which switches to landscape mode. And landscape gives you a lot of history all in one screen. So you can see like going way back days and days and
Wow, it
days.
goes. That's cool. Most CGM's competitors are 24 hours. It's cool that you can go so far back.
Up at the top there is 7 days. There's a button for 7 days. There's a button for 14 days. There's a button for 30 days and a button for 90 days if you want to get crazy. So there's a 90 days of data all on one
Wow,
screen.
very cool.
Oh, and there's a little share button down here too. So you can share it to your doctors, your sensor data. You can send that off to your endo or whoever wants to see it.
Speaking of sharing, there's also the ability to share numbers with others,
Yes.
friends and family, with like the Eversense Now app. Do you share your numbers with anyone?
No, I don't share numbers with anyone because for starters, I'm the only one who needs to know, in my opinion. But there are some folks who love the idea of share.
Also, we were talking before the call that you don't use a smartwatch, but I do know that there is a smartwatch app, at least on iPhone. Have you ever considered that?
Yeah, I've considered it, but at the same time, I'm such a minimalist diabetic that the less diabetes I can bring with me, I think the better. Although I don't have an Apple Watch. I have a different smartwatch for like navigation and backcountry stuff and things like that. I can get alerts from the phone, but again, if I have my phone with me, why do I need it on the watch?
What would be your advice to someone listening that is interested in Eversense but a little nervous to start?
Fantastic question. I do get this a little bit too, because at my local doctor's office, they do get new patients in. And I'm happy to meet with some folks and just say, hey, look, this is going to be a big step in your diabetes management because you're going to be with a very small group of people who are Eversense users. And with most Eversense users, I'm not saying all of them, but with a good majority, we love our Eversense system because of the way it's so flexible, convenient, and fits into our lifestyles. But yeah, there's something really to be excited about. Um,
Yeah.
Again, take everything you know about CGM and put it in the back seat. You can't go into Eversense CGM technology without leaving some of that old CGM tech baggage behind. It's different.
Yeah.
I always say it's a radical different things. Eversense folk don't like me using the word radical, but for me myself, I like to use that word because it is, for me, it's a radical change in the way that diabetes management happens.
You're using a device that, to me and many of my listeners, is such a more out there, innovative, radical device out there, such a big innovation. What other innovation in diabetes technology do you want to see?
I love this question. I love it because, for someone like me who's been living with diabetes since the mid 80s, since 1986, I've seen a lot of tech progress. It's like molasses. I mean, honestly, I know the technology is way more advanced than ever gets released to the public in such a short time frame. But the one piece of tech that I'm really hoping for is smart insulin. That's the
Th-
one piece of
that's
tech that I'm
mine too.
I'm
That's
so
For those of you who don't know, smart insulin is insulin that's injected every day, or however, maybe it's once a week, but it's only activated when there's glucose for it to attack. So if you put in a bunch of units, you don't have to worry about it activating unless it needs to be used, and then it just goes out of the system.
because I want to minimize diabetes so much. I've been a diabetic for long enough that I've experienced burnout. I've experienced the worst parts of diabetes burnout. And having stuff connected to your body adds to the burnout. Changing pump infusion sites, changing CGMs, all of that adds to that burnout. So the less of that, the less, daily injections, the less, bolus injections or inhales that I need to do, the less diabetes, the better. So that's the reason why smart insulin is like my number one, forward-looking hope for the future is getting that. Because if I can have insulin on board that's only active when it needs to be, and then it turns off when it doesn't need to be. Oh, what a wonderful weight to be lifted off a diabetic's shoulders.
Yeah,
How
it
amazing.
theoretically could be a cure for diabetes by using this insulin.
Yeah.
It just manages everything for you. My last question is: Eversense recently got cleared approval for iCGM clearance,
Yes.
which could bring automation to the device, allowing the sensor to work with pumps. If this did happen, would you consider going on a pump, and which pump would it be
Great question.
if you could choose?
Yeah, I would probably say yes. I would go back on a pump just so that I can see how the whole system works, how to see this functioning. Having this other piece of tech, this robot, make decisions for me or help me make decisions in my insulin management, in my glucose management, things like that. That would be fascinating, and I think the fascination is what would say, okay, let me go back onto a pump just to see what this is like. Who knows? This could change my mind completely. I don't know. I mean, it could be the thing that says, okay, hands down, this ICGM tech is the winner. I am back on a pump. Let's go. The question of which pump I would probably select. I like the idea of Omnipod because it's tubeless. However, I have had so many Omnipod fails in the mountains that it has left a once bitten, twice shy approach in my mind. So Omnipod,
Mhm.
I wish it worked in the mountains better. I just wish, but it doesn't.
All right. Well, Omnipod, if you're listening,
yeah, Omnipod, I'm
do some
sorry. I'm
field
so
testing in the
sorry.
mountains.
Look, hey, it's not you. It's not you. It's me. I take my devices into some rough terrain. It's me, 100%. I remember I used the tandem pump before the X2. I used the tandem pump for a while when it was available through my doctor's office, and it was like, I thought this was great. It was a great pump. My favorite pump of all time, way back in the days, was Animas. I used the Animas pump because it was a durable workhorse. You could beat that thing around and it was still holding together. So I loved my Animas, and I was bummed when they closed down and they gave all their technology to Medtronic. Sorry, Medtronic. A tubed pump of Tandem, or if Omnipod worked in the mountains, then maybe Omnipod.
Yeah.
But I am curious about the Mobi system because of its small profile, its small size. So, and I have been on a pump breaks, and I didn't get a chance to use the Mobi system. But yeah, those would be,
Great.
A Tandem number 1, Omnipod number 2, Mobi number 3.
Very cool. Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
I loved your enthusiasm. I learned so much, and I'm very curious about the Eversense. I'd really love to try it myself. So we'll see. Hopefully I can sometime.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I would love to have, if you do get on the Eversense, even as a trial patient, I would love to have another conversation and we can compare notes, back down the road.
Oh, that'd be so
How
cool.
has your experience been? How has mine been different? That kind of thing.
Sounds great. All right. Then hopefully we'll be talking again soon.
All right, then. Thanks, Justin.
I am even more intrigued by the Eversense CGM after this conversation. What are your thoughts on the Eversense CGM? Let me know in the comments. Would you get a procedure done to have an implanted CGM for a half a year? I'm curious to know. I think that I could do it. After hearing what I heard, there are some trade-offs always, but I think it's something that I would consider. New episodes of this podcast released every Monday, wherever you listen, and in video on YouTube. Links to my YouTube channel and my social media accounts are in the show notes. I'm Justin, and I'll see you next week.